What's up, everybody? One Fun Guy Podcast, just hanging out tonight for a little bit. I have Heather coming up in about 10 minutes, so I thought I'd come on live just to say what's up and get things going before we start. I'm going to text her just to let her know I'm on, and we will go from there. So it is going to be a super fun night, guys. I am kind of intrigued to see how this is going to turn out because I've never done a podcast via TikTok. I always go live on StreamYard and over to YouTube and then over to, Facebook over to YouTube. So we're going to do the podcast live tonight from StreamYard. We thought it would just be from TikTok. It would just be a better way to go about it. So I've never done it. So this is kind of cool. I'm excited to see what is gonna happen. I don't think it's gonna be any different, but there's gonna be comments and there's gonna be interaction, so it might be kind of fun. I don't know. Is it gonna be my new norm? I'm not saying that, but I thought it would just be kind of a cool way to see how we interact and engage with each other while we're doing our podcast on TikTok. So we got a lot of stuff going on. So if you're live and when you're ready to do this, just kind of hop on in and say what's up and just be a part of tonight's podcast, and go from there. So with that being said, I'm going to wait for Heather to hop on and then we're going to get this going. So Annie hopped on. Nick, what's up? So the podcast is going to be live tonight, right? Via TikTok, which is I'm my first time doing it. I've been live on TikTok before, but tonight's going to be the first night that I'm actually doing a podcast in its entirety from start to finish on the actual app of TikTok. So it's going to be cool. So I'm kind of just hanging out, waiting for Heather to hop on, and we're kind of going to go from there and see what we can get into and kind of go from there and see so we're going to make this happen. It's going to be great. I'm just texting Heather again, see what we're going to do here. I don't know if we're going to be live together, split live, or if she's just going to hop on mine. So we're going to figure it out. I am going to share the show to a couple people while we are just kind of hanging out in here and see, like I said, what we can get into tonight. It should be pretty fun. Hopefully you guys are hopping on and sharing the show and interested in seeing the podcast. It's kind of cool. I like I said, it's going to be my first podcast from TikTok, so we'll see what happens, what we can get into, and see what we can come up with and what we're gonna do, and kind of go from there. I don't know. It'll be fun though. I'm definitely liking the platform. I'm a big TikTok supporter. I think it's great for the networking community and online community. So I'm super happy to be here, obviously, with Heather. It'll be awesome. I'm trying to share it to her, but I don't know how to do it. It says to look for somebody, but I cannot see her in the thing. So that is weird, but nothing we can't get past, I don't think. Just a workaround. We'll make it happen. There she is. So I'm going to send it out to her, see if she joins on. We said 7:30. I am a tad early. I just wanted to hop on just to kind of get the flow going and get the TikTok world out and about. See if I can hit the FYP again. I know a lot of you guys support what I'm doing and share the show and do all the stuff that you're supposed to do, which is awesome. But it helps me get out there, especially when I'm live, to do it. So if you guys like what you see and you share the show or you like it, I'd appreciate that. It's going to be my first podcast that I'm doing on TikTok. So I don't know if we're just going to have a conversation or if we're going to follow the format. Who knows? It's going to be a wild night. But I'm up for it. I'm excited. I'm happy to be doing it on TikTok. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out and what we got going on. So we will go from there. So, we'll see what happens and go from there. So like I said, I'm just hanging out waiting for Heather. I'm early, obviously. We said 7:30. We'll see if that happens. It might be a few minutes after, depending on how we interact and interface with TikTok. Sometimes we are able to do this right away, and then other times we have to end and restart again. So hopefully that's not the case. We're just going to see what's happening and go from there. So if you guys are on, say what's up, say hi. If you like the show, that's awesome. If you share the show, that's awesome. I am on YouTube, One Fun Guy Podcast over on YouTube. So if you please subscribe to my YouTube channel, that would be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, we'll just kind of see where this evening takes us. I don't have a definitive theory of what's going to happen or what is going to come of this, but it should be pretty awesome. I'm pretty happy that we're doing this, so going from there. So Missy, what's up? OG, what's happening? Bert, what's going on? Austin, what's happening? This is my podcast, guys. I'm waiting for my guest to hop on. Heather's going to be my guest tonight. I just came on early to hang out with you guys and say what's up and kind of get everything going before we start. And then from there, we'll obviously start the podcast. So that's kind of where I'm just hanging out with you guys for a little bit, waiting until Heather hops on, and we'll go from there. So I'm just sharing out the show right now. If anybody's on and they want to hop on and say what's up, that'd be awesome. Hopefully I'm not resharing this to a bunch of people. I just don't know if you guys got it, so I'm trying to see if there's any reason why some people haven't gotten it, but no biggie. So if you got it on again, Penniless, what's up? So if you guys are on, say hey, share the show, like the show. It would be much appreciated. If I could hit the FYP tonight, that would be awesome. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm not really out to do that, but it just kind of helps the algorithm. So Marv, what's up? Kind of go from there. So Heather will be on. Penniless. Heather's my buddy's wife. That's in the band. So we're kind of just seeing what's going on. We're just kind of hanging out tonight. The podcast is going to happen as soon as she hops on. We said 7:30, but I don't know how the connection is going to be. So just bear with us for a little bit, guys. Once she gets on, we'll start the introductions and we'll get right into things. We're going to go from there. On your way to VA, that's awesome. I love Virginia. It's a great state. You definitely made the right move by doing that, for sure, hands down. Get out of the bitter cold and snow, for sure. It's awful. Hopefully Chicago's not too harsh of a winter this year. I'm really not looking forward to that bitter cold and snow, so I'm hoping it just eases. Easy light winter. But we'll see, Sylvia, what's up? So we're just kind of hanging out, guys. Heather's going to be my guest. We're going to do the podcast tonight via TikTok. It's my first time doing it, so I'm really kind of just cool. Laura, what's up? I'm kind of just taking it all in, guys, because I've never done a TikTok podcast before. Car issues, no good. Hopefully it all gets straightened out for you, Sylvia. But yeah, I'm doing the podcast via TikTok tonight, which is unique because I've never really done that before, and I'm kind of excited to see how this plays out and see what kind of, questions we get, or if anybody wants to share the show or be interactive with it. I'm still going to download it and upload it to YouTube, but it's just not my normal format, right? It's more, my normal format is StreamYard to Facebook to YouTube, and this is going to be TikTok straight to YouTube. So I don't know if I can edit my TikTok videos. I think when they're longer than a certain time frame, you can't. So it'll just be loaded up the way it sits in its entirety. So all the stuff that we got going on and everything we have going on with it, we're just going to kind of see what happens and go from there. So, I appreciate you guys liking the live and sharing the videos. It really helps me out a lot. If you're watching this and you haven't been to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. It's One Fun Guy Podcast over on YouTube. Heather's going to be on in a little bit. We're going to do the podcast from there. This live will be up. Like I said, I don't know how to edit it on TikTok. From StreamYard to Facebook, I definitely know how to do it. If there's any glitches or anything, I can remove them. It's a pretty easy user interface. I don't know how TikTok is going to be. I've never been able to edit a video once it's longer than a certain point. A couple seconds here and there, a minute, when you can edit the videos and see and add music and stuff. I've never know if I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that from the live tonight. So it just might be the way it is the way it is, right? So we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to just kind of go from there. But, thank you guys for all the love and support. I really, really appreciate it. It's awesome. Everything that you guys are doing for me is fantastic. I love you guys for it. So thank you so much for doing that. I'm just it did grow. I actually have to get it trimmed, and the barber, Alexa, that I have is on vacation this week. So I want to get it cut short, obviously, or not shorter, but I don't want to do it myself and mess it up. So I'm waiting for her to get back. So she's back next Wednesday, and I have my appointment next Saturday. So beard will be nice and tight going into the weekend next weekend. I couldn't get in this week. I was like, hey, you got anything for this Friday or Saturday? She's like, I'm out of town. I got nothing. I was like, oh. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, it's a little bit longer than I normally have it, but it doesn't look bad. I tried to taper it up myself the best I could and kind of go from there. So, but next week it'll be a new beard, new me, right? That's what they say, or something like that. So, so it'll just be trimmed up next weekend. Then I just had to wait an extra week, which obviously I've gone, I think 3 weeks or 4 weeks without doing anything. So, a couple more days isn't going to hurt anything. So it's just the way that cookie crumbled. It wasn't in my favor. So it's just the way that cookie crumbled. It wasn't in my favor. So we're going to go from there. Let's see how we got this going on. I think Heather's
Hey!
Hey, what's going on?
Wait, let me turn my volume up because I can't hear you. Are you there?
I just caught the glimpse of the side. Are those Spock ears?
Yes.
They are.
I had a work party today, and I was the only one that dressed in a costume, but I'm not mad about it.
Oh, nice.
And
yeah, that's awesome.
I've never used these ears. Sorry, my brain is gonna be glitching.
No worries.
A little bit.
No, we'll take it easy, and we'll take it slow, and we'll go from there. So did people know that you were Spock, or were they kind of like, did people recognize the outfit, like the Live Long and Prosper, or do they not get it?
Yeah. I had a bunch of people come up and say stuff. I mean, I guess I could be like female Spock, but I was kind of just going more for like generic Vulcan.
Sure.
I mean, I suppose I could have looked up. I don't think there's been a Vulcan that wore the red dress though. And
no, I don't know.
This is the Uhura dress. I've had this dress for like 25 years. It's my Halloween costume every year, but this is the first time I've ever done the ears.
The ears? Are they comfortable?
They are. I thought it was going to bug me, and that's why I've never used them before. But like, I have a little bit of a headache now, and I can kind of feel like my ears are starting to get irritated. But I put them on at like 7:30 this morning. So
and you didn't get
12
the
hours.
itch?
No.
Like you kind of do one of these and you accidentally knock it off because you're not used to wearing them.
No. I put like bobby pins in my hair. So and I mean, because I wear a lot of makeup like all the time, I'm kind of used to having to be aware of what's on my face and my head. I wish they were a little more realistic. Like they're very
the color, you mean?
Yeah, they're very, and like they don't come all the way down. There's this huge, but from far away, it's fine.
What if you were to put makeup over them? And
I tried that. The problem is there's still like this ridge here, and there's other stuff that you can get to like put on top and smooth it down, but I didn't go that far. Oh, Johnny's here! Yay! Hi.
So I shared it out the best I could. with everybody that's on. So we're just kind of going to see how it goes, because I was telling them I hopped on about 10 minutes early just because I didn't know if there was going to be any glitches or anything. So I just wanted to make sure that it was okay. But I've never edited a video from TikTok. Like when you do it from StreamYard, you can edit the video before you send it to Facebook and then bring it back, and you can kind of it when you play it, when you watch it. You can see if there's any glitches or like hiccups, or if anything like pixelates or freezes. There's a little cursor. You can just take that like 3 seconds out. And then when you play the video, you don't really know that it's not there. But TikTok, anything over a couple seconds, I've never really edited, right? So when you do a normal TikTok video that's 2 or 3 minutes long, they give you the basic editing tools. But I don't know if you could do it on a 35 or 40 minute or however long we're on video. So we might just have to rock this in its entirety. So I'm super excited because it's
once the first time I've ever done this. You will get it shows up. I forget where it is exactly, but you can download the whole thing and then you can edit it.
So it's live. So you go to Live Creator and then you go to My Recent Lives and it lists them all and you can download it. I just don't know how to edit it from TikTok. So I might have to try to get it from my phone over to my laptop, because obviously I download it from my phone just because it's faster than using the tablet, which I'm on an iPad now with you. But I download it from my phone just because the internet's faster on it. And then I'm wondering if I could like maybe email it to my stuff. Shelly, what's going on? If I could email it and then edit it, we'll figure it out. I don't know. But either way, it's going to be awesome. So I'm super excited to have you.
Awesome. What are your posters?
So they're just samurais. And the first night I went live with Cal, we were talking about it. And I hate my background, right? It's my wood. I'm in my finished basement. That's like all my movies are in there. So I have a cabinet on this side of me and I have a cabinet on this side of me. And it's the same wood. So I didn't want to paint it because if I do one, I have to do them all. I didn't know how to cover it. And somebody said get like contact paper and like put it on there, but then when you peel it off, it's real wood. So I don't want it to like discolor or like stick. So I thought like, what could I do? So I was thinking down the road, if I come into some, a little bit of money or something along the way, I was thinking, because there's an outlet right here, that maybe I could just hang a TV over it and use change whatever I want in the background and do it that way. Just get like a cheap, $99, 50-inch TV and just put the clips on it and hang it. But I don't know what I'm going to do. So Mike was like, it's not bad, but he's like, it's not great either, right? But it's just kind of my room type of thing. And I can't really do anything to it. And then he said, why don't you just take the doors off of it? Like just unscrew them and expose the movies you got back there.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Like a bunch of horror movies. And I said, that's a great idea. But you still have the wood frame around it. So it's the light. So I don't know if it would work that well. So, but anyways, so they're samurai. They're just canvas things I got off of, I think it was Wish or Temu. They were like $1 for like 4 of them. But I thought I could put each one on each door. And they're not long enough and they're not wide enough, so I can't do that. So
this might die, so I might end up in shitty lighting again. But
no worries, we'll deal with it. So so that's what those are though. They're just cheap Temu or Wish canvas prints that I didn't frame, because if I frame them, then obviously I can't hang them. So I just tucked them underneath the thing. So far they're okay. They're not great. I don't know what I'm gonna do though. It's been my kind of my hang up since I've been on here. So, but other than that, so where do you want to start? Do you want me to do this like I normally do a podcast, or you just kind of want to hang out and chat, or do you want to?
Whatever you feel like.
So normally what I do is I would say, why don't you introduce yourself, tell the audience who you are, and we'll kind of just go from there. So if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself, we'll start the show that way.
Cool. All right. I'm Heather. My artist name is Häxa. Häxa is the Swedish word for witch. And today I am Vulcan because we had a work party. So I make electronic music, and I started playing piano when I was really, really young and singing like 5, 6 years old. But this is my first electronic project and my first solo project. I've been in like bands and stuff before. So it's really interesting. It's cool because I don't have to take anyone else's opinion into consideration. Right. Like, it's mine. I can do whatever the fuck I want. So I like that part of it.
Awesome.
But then it's a lot harder because I'm the only one doing everything. So,
okay.
You know.
So since we're on the music thing, right? How did you get into music? Where obviously you're a musical family, we could tell. Has it been something that like has kind of been with you since you were a kid? Like, what kind of music did you grow up on? What did you like?
Yeah.
What styles? Like, tell us about your musical journey. We'll start from the beginning. Where did it stem from?
So when I was 2 years old, actually, when I was 6 years old, I was 7. I had the lead role in a 2-hour church musical. And then the next year I started learning to play piano by ear, and I was like learning Fur-Elise and Moonlight Sonata. Those were the two things I was kind of obsessed with for like a month. So then my mom was like, you need to take piano lessons. And then I did, like church choirs. So I grew up in a religious cult in Alaska. So I didn't actually listen to anything except Christian music until I was like 16 or 17, probably.
Okay.
Like we only watched Disney movies or black and white musicals, and Star Trek. I don't know why my parents thought Star Trek was okay, but nothing else. But yeah, music has just kind of always been a big part of my life. I mean, I didn't start doing original music until probably into my 30s. Like I wrote a couple songs when I was younger, but then I was doing like jazz clubs and like wedding cover bands for a long time. And that's just, I got tired of it. It's not really fun.
Okay.
So then what was the first band that I was in where I had like a significant contribution was this band called Back Pocket. And it was kind of like a jam band almost, like a little bluesy too.
Okay.
And we recorded a demo at WZRD actually, where it's a radio station here in Chicago at I forget which college, Northwestern maybe. Okay. I just finished there a couple of weeks ago. But we recorded our demo at this for the live radio show. That was really fun. And then I did a couple other things, and then the Häxa project happened because I had been listening to a lot of like Wardruna. Are you familiar with at all?
Yeah. We'll talk about like what I wanted to go with was like.
Am I going too far?
No. I love it. Just, nothing is on topic. It's just kind of. I just kind of want to get like what like musical styles did you grow up with? Were you like into the full country rock? Because everybody has like an eclectic background of like bands that got them started in music. And, for me, it was the 80s like hair metal band. I was 8 years old in 1988. And everywhere you look, that was all around. It was the 80s was like, the thing. And I gravitated more towards that because my cousin Chris, he was big into the 80s hair metal bands. And that's, he would be like, I just got the new Rat tape. And I was like, what's Rat? So that's what I grew up on. So what about you? Like, what did you what caught your ear musically? Like, what did you?
Well, I didn't get exposed to non-Christian music until I was a bit older.
Okay.
And then I think I was still into I was into jazz for a long time, a little bit of pop, classic rock. I used to love the Eagles, Rush. Always, and the Doors. I really liked. I was also a big hippie for a long time, so the Doors and Bob Dylan, like storytellers kind of songwriting I really liked.
Yeah, the Doors are one of my favorite bands. and I said on the pod call, I mentioned Jim Morrison as being the first shock rocker. In my opinion, I think he's the guy. If you're going to look at all the guys that came after him, even the bizarre ones like the Sex Pistols and Gigi Allen and, Manson and Zombie and all these guys, Morrison was the first one to do it, right? He pushed the envelope more than any other artist, at that time, because the first was really probably Elvis, right? The hip shaking and people freaked out and said, they're not going to watch this. The Beatles craze kind of took over, and and then it went right into basically the Stones, and then the Doors were the first ones, right? So Morrison was, to me, the icon of artist, but my opinion anyways.
American Prayer is my favorite.
Yeah.
Because I really liked poetry and spoken word, and then my first husband actually was a slam poet, an artist, and so he introduced me to a lot of that stuff too. And then awesome. I didn't really get into like heavier stuff and electronic stuff till quite a bit later.
Okay. What was the appeal to the electric music? Like what bands kind of got you into that kind of scene? Was there any particular one? Because one came to mind for me when I was in high school that got me into that.
It's so hard to say. I mean, I know everybody says I listen to everything, but I really do listen to everything. There's this, well, let me think here.
I mean, it doesn't have to be like the one song or the one band, but what got me into more electronic and industrial music in high school, a buddy of mine, I was always into the heavier side of music, right? So in freshman year of high school, I'm listening to Pantera, Megadeth, Cannibal Corpse, bands like that. And a buddy of mine had an album by V&V Nation, and I didn't know what it was. And we kind of just traded CDs. I think I gave him, I don't know if it was a Megadeth or an Anthrax album, and he gave me the V&V Nation one. And it was like that industrial, electric, and that kind of took me down that path, because I didn't, obviously I knew who Nine Inch Nails were, but I didn't, I wasn't familiar with their catalog at that time. But V&V Nation was the first album that he gave me that I was like, this is awesome. And then that was where the trajectory went the other way for me, into that kind of, because they had a little bit of everything. I don't know if you've ever heard of V&V Nation, but they're kind of a punk, industrial, electronic goth band, if that makes sense. They kind of,
that sounds awesome,
across the board of everything, but their electronic music over industrial is kind of their sound. That was kind of their glitch and things, but it was really cool.
I'm kind of it takes me forever to get into a new genre, because I end up listening to one genre, sometimes even one band on repeat for months or even years. So, but I think the first thing that made me start thinking about electronic music differently than other genres is when Stranger Things came out. Okay. And the band Survive that did the soundtrack for that, that got me into synthwave. Okay. And then from synthwave, I kind of went into some heavier stuff, and then I found Witch House. Okay. And I've been stuck on basically listening to Witch House for the last 4 or 5 years now.
No, I'm not familiar with that band, so I'm
starting to explore more industrial stuff. Yeah, because that's a big.
I've never heard of Witch House, so now I'm gonna have to check them out. I've never heard.
Sweet.
Yeah.
The label I'm on, Blasphemy Records, has it's all Witch House artists. It's pretty. Okay. It's a pretty diverse genre. I think a lot of people think Witch House is just this one sound, but there's a lot of variety. It's a very small genre. Yeah. There aren't a ton of Witch House artists, but I would definitely say there's variety. I'm obviously more melodic and softer, and then there's some heavy stuff that has black metal influences or. Yeah.
I know the one of the first bands that introduced witches to me that I remember being kind of intrigued by was Cradle of Filth. Right, because nice. they had that kind of evil, occultist kind of thing, and they had an album called Death in Her Embrace, and it was a vampire witch type of thing, and it was just kind of I don't know why, but I think at that point I know we had talked about it before, but album covers for whatever reason, I'm drawn to them, right? So if it's good artists, if it's good, like the music could be awful, but if the art is cool, like I'm like a sucker for it. And Cradle of Filth had the coolest album covers. They just always have. But it was the first kind of music that got me into that kind of more like obscure death stuff, like more like, Obituary and Cannibal Corpse and, all the death metal bands were in that. But like Cradle was kind of the band that was like more, it opened my eyes to like what that kind of scene was. So I really was involved in that a lot. And then there was a black metal band called Abigail Williams. And they were all like, witchcraft was like their big thing.
Why does that name sound familiar? Is that a historical person? I think
Yeah, so it's so King Diamond had the album called Abigail. It was based off of her. She was, I think, a witch in the Salem witch trials, but she was like one of the more famous ones.
Oh,
So
okay.
Abigail Williams was kind of, but the band Abigail Williams was like it was all that imagery, and it was just kind of, it drew me into that. So
nice.
We'll touch on that a little bit later. We'll stick with music for now. So starting Häxa and doing all of that kind of stuff, was that something that was in the background? Did you kind of say I wanted to always do my own thing, or were you comfortable with a band, or like is it something that like, because I know a lot of musicians and a lot of artists say that they always want to do their thing, right? When they're in a band, it's a group, eclectic minds, and it's kind of everybody's got their input. But when you're a solo artist or you name a band after yourself and you're the leader, everyone kind of just falls in. So is that something that you said that was kind of like the end game for you to do that, or were you just happy with whatever musical journey you ended up on?
It's funny because the concept of Häxa, like just the character even, actually came from when my husband and I first met. At some point a bit later, we started kind of writing this sci-fi story together, and there was, we fleshed out some of the characters and did some world building, and then I had this idea that in the far future, in like the year 3000 something, there would be so little nature left that it would be sacred, and so most people wouldn't care about it, and then there would be this cult of people that worship nature. In the year 3370, whatever.
Right.
And then I'm trying to remember why or when I decided that I wanted to learn electronic production. Probably because that's what he was doing. And I was like, this is really cool. I can make all these sounds with just a keyboard on my laptop. And then it just, I guess it started taking up more of my time, and I really enjoyed it. And then I decided to start a project, and I was listening to a lot of Witch House and a lot of synthwave and Wardruna. Okay. Which is kind of what Häxa has turned out to be so far. Like if you combine those sounds.
Now, you obviously sing and you have a great voice. Is that something you've always done, or is that kind of like, how did you know you had the vocal capability like to really hone in on it and say, I can really sing, versus people who basically sing in the shower and think they're, Whitney Houston
so I did have that. I had the lead role in a musical when I was 7. So there's that. And then I remember I had to have been 6 or 7 also at the time, because it was before we moved from Anchorage. I remember being in church and I started picking out harmonies, and then it became a fun thing for me to try to find harmonies to sing with. And then I did choir, and I always got solos, and I was in a cappella groups, and I guess if I didn't have a good voice, those things wouldn't have happened. Right.
Sure. That makes total sense. Every time you say Alaska, all I think of is 30 Days a Night.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
I don't know why.
My favorites.
So
a really good
all
one.
right, so as a kid, you said earlier, and I didn't know this about you, but you were in a cult. Is that a real cult, or is it just kind of a?
Yeah, it was a Pentecostal organization that, as far as I know, still exists. They've had some splinterings and fracturings of groups. I mean, some people might not say it's a cult because there isn't necessarily one single leader.
Sure.
But the way they enforce their ideals and their ideology and the doctrine and how stringent they are,
Sure.
and the extent of the sort of like emotional psychological manipulation is on a cult level.
Okay.
But it was one of those kind where the women can't wear makeup or cut their hair. Sleeves have to be, so imagine like Amish people, basically. But then also speaking in tongues and like, falling out on the floor and that kind of stuff. In the South, there was definitely snake handling. In Alaska, there weren't snakes. So if there were, they would have done it, I'm sure. Very, very restrictive.
If you get bit, you were meant to get bit. God didn't protect you from the snakes, right?
Yeah. So not only in Alaska, which is extremely remote, right? In a cult, homeschooled. So I had like zero exposure to the real world until I was 17.
Okay. So how did Alaska come about? Obviously your parents were there. Is that like...
Yeah. My mom had lived there when she was a teenager, and she went back to the lower 48 is what we call it.
Okay.
And then I think I was maybe a year old, or I don't remember exactly when it was, but she went back to Alaska to escape my dad, because it was a bad situation. And then she married my stepdad when I was like 8, and he basically raised me.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I lived in Alaska till I was 17, I think.
Okay. And then,
yeah, 17.
Okay, so 17, where do you go from there now? Do you come back to the U.S. or do you go...
I went to, first I went to a Bible college in California where I got the nickname Jezebel. Then I went to a Bible college in Indiana where I got kicked out. And then I stayed in Indiana because by that time I was like 20. Okay. And I had started working a job and I got my own apartment. And I was like, I don't want to move back with my parents. And I was already I got kicked out of the Bible school because I was questioning the doctrine and like actually studying the Greek and Hebrew and being like, hey, what you're teaching us is not what the Bible actually says. And of course I didn't like that. So I became an atheist very shortly after that, actually, because of how much I studied the Bible and saw, like contradictions and And for me, it really comes down to there's no proof, and I don't think it's in any way beneficial for me to believe in something that I don't think exists.
Okay, so I'm going to give you kind of a homework lesson. There's a guy named Billy Carson. Have you heard of Billy Carson?
That sounds familiar.
So he is a scientist, astrologist, archaeologist, and he studies ancient tablets and texts. So the Sumerian tablets, the Emerald tablets that predate modern religion by 10,000. I mean, at least 10 to 50,000 years. These tablets have the date on it. And he talks a lot about the Anunnaki and space travel and the pyramids, and it's a very interesting perspective on religion, because he doesn't say that I'm like trying to change your mind about things, but he gives logistical explanations for the characters in the Bible of who they really are. And he goes into Thoth, the Atlantean, who basically is the creator of things, right? And he explains his brother basically said, you can't do this. And he said, well, watch me. And he basically created human with DNA. So the giants.
Okay.
So he says that before mankind, there were literal giants, people that were, 16, 17, 18 feet tall was the normal, those bigger beings. And they cross-referenced DNA and created us. And he said they're all in the tablets, right? You read the tablets and you read the text, and that's what it is. So he's like, I'm not trying to like bash modern religion, but he says every character in the Bible is based off of these ancient texts and tablets of people that exist. So if you like that kind of stuff, cool. Billy Carson is phenomenal.
That's cool. I'll have to look that up.
So,
especially when it comes to the Old Testament, though, I think what a lot of people don't realize is Hebrew is a very poetic language, and pretty much almost all the stories in the Old Testament were not meant to be taken literally. They were actually written as poetry first.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were probably based on like real people that existed, but then, it's almost like a game of telephone.
Right.
Folklore changes over time.
Sure. So obviously, I was born and raised Catholic, and
I'm
so
sorry.
now reading into the Bible scriptures, right? Like I've done that over the course of 40 years of life, but I never knew an Ethiopian Bible existed, right? And that predates the modern Bible by at least 2,500 years. And it has scriptures that they omitted in this one. Now I've been kind of going down the rabbit hole of King James, right? Who basically translated the Bible into modern times, right? But he also wrote a book other than the Bible that he translated into what we know as the modern Bible, but he was big into witchcraft and demonology. And he wrote a book entirely on demonology the same time he was translating the Bible. So a lot of the so it is very
well. And there's a bunch of Jewish books that are left out of the Old Testament in
and,
Christian Bibles.
and that's why they're saying that like he omitted a bunch of stuff and he changed and rewrote the script basically of to what we now know as a modern Bible, which is obviously the most bought and read book in the world, right? But a lot of it. So Billy Carson talks a lot about that, and it doesn't change my belief at all. But like
are you Christian?
I am, but like I'm more open minded, right? So I'm
Cool.
I'm
I'll
more
I'll not trash talk you too much then.
yeah. And so it's one of the things, right? Like you grew up in a cult, right? And that's what you knew from a kid, right? So I was born and raised Catholic. That's what I knew until I got to high school, basically, right? And then once you get to high school and college and you start reading and learning about things, right? And then, like you said, you start to question things, right? Like what is going on? And now, again, you look at the modern day Catholic Church, right? And there are a lot of secrets that they keep. And as people start exposing what is in the chambers of the Vatican and what's in the basement and what's in all this stuff, and you start hearing about people that have gone down there and they read about alien text and they read about different life forms, it's all been suppressed, right? They don't want you to know about that. That's bad. So when you start questioning that and asking, they say it doesn't exist. So that's kind of where it is. So I'm more open-minded now. Obviously, my faith is my faith, and I still am in. But I'm much more open-minded and very opinionated now about things that are what is real and what we've been told, and trying to find the realisms and truths in some stuff. But obviously, everything that has been said is obviously not real. So it's open for interpretation. So.
I do appreciate that there are Christians, and some I've met personally and some I've watched in documentaries that believe in creation and evolution. Like they have a way of combining it, which is interesting to me.
And it's weird because, like I said, once you start getting into the Billy Carsons of the world and you actually start looking at like people that came from outer space, what they called angels, but they were basically aliens at that point, and they had stargates where they could travel, and like what our world is actually based on, and grids of star alignments, and it all makes sense, right? You're like, we weren't created by, they created us. They mixed our DNA.
Is it the seed theory?
His is the Anunnaki theory, that basically they came from a different planet, a different galaxy, and they found Earth. And it was two brothers that basically got into a fight. And the one brother says, you can't leave it alone. Don't mess with this planet. It's not yours to be had. Find a different planet in the galaxy. And he basically told his brother, I'm not doing that. This is my planet, and they're going to worship me. And I'm going to create them in my image. And he basically changed our DNA and created the modern human. And he goes all the way back to the Emerald text and the Sumerian tablets that basically explain everything. They explain the dinosaurs. So it's a very unique perspective on like what we know as reality versus what we've been told since we were kids, right? So there is an aspect to a God theory, but it's a different view of it, right? Creation's a different aspect of it. Yeah. So
sorry, I might do that a few more times.
No worries. Well, we'll get through this. Don't worry. It's fine. So obviously, so we have that aspect of it, right? So where did the because are you Wiccan, or is that not the right
It's okay. Wicca is kind of like its own religion almost.
Okay, explain that the difference. Like, walk us through where you're at now.
So Wicca is witches. It is witchcraft. But it's, to me, it's like a religion because there's a lot of rules. You have to be inducted. You have to be in a coven. You have to do things a certain way. And I really prefer to do my craft a lot more intuitively. So I've always felt really connected to nature. Like growing up in Alaska, I was outside all the time. We had horses, we had a pig, we had dogs, I had a wolf. And I would just walk around and like talk to the trees when I was a kid. And then I want to say I started really studying witchcraft probably about 12 or 15 years ago now, maybe.
Okay.
Like just getting interested in it. Initially because I was looking into my family history, and my dad's side of the family is from Sweden.
Okay.
Which obviously there's a lot of all the Norse mythology there. And then my mom's side of the family is Cherokee. And I wanted, because I was trying to learn more about, those two cultures, I learned how much nature matters.
Sure.
And then I lost my thought. It went off out the window somewhere.
Okay. So obviously, I forgot her name. She's a fashion owner, designer. She's like Balenciaga and a couple other things. They basically say that like she's like the most like notable witch living today. And they said she could be into the hundreds, but she's like 84. She married a guy that's like 35 years younger than him.
Wait, are you talking about she recently died. She was with not Gareth Pugh? No. Rick Owens.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, she died.
Yeah.
I think she did.
But I first saw her story
like that.
on an Amazon documentary, right? About how she got into cultism and like what, but they said that she lied about her age for like years. That when she was 80, she was really like 110.
Ah, well, somebody who was 115 just died last week.
Yeah. So she's kind of like what got me into like that kind of thing. Obviously, we all watched The Wizard of Oz, so everyone is familiar with like the witch, right? And you kind of get that aspect of it. And then you get kind of the mysticism with the Blair Witch, right? And then they made the movie Witches, and they've always kind of portrayed them as like these horrific, evil killer beings, and they're kind of, and the male warlock version of a witch, and I was telling a couple weeks ago when I went live after I came to the event that you were singing and being a part of. And I was like, that wasn't really bad at all. It was kind of cool, right? And it was like, so it kind of changed my mind about like, mysticism and stuff like that, where you kind of get that, like, they get a bad rap, right? They're people say, oh, well, you don't want to be a witch. They're evil. And they're like, and it's so, but I didn't feel that way at all. I felt welcomed, and I felt like I connected, and it was just kind of cool.
Wait, you were at the Rockford show, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, by the way.
Yeah.
That was really fun.
I was totally like blown away, like about how like laid back it was. I thought it was going to be like all these, evil people, and like they were just going to be mean and like evil spirited, and I was going to be the outcast. I didn't feel that way at all. It was like a totally like eye-opening experience, like for the best way possible. It was fantastic. Like I was like, this is awesome. I would do this again.
Well, I would say most witches, because like there's such a huge emphasis on nature, you can be an asshole and be a witch, but you're not gonna last very long in the community.
Right.
You're gonna end up,
all
yourself completely. You're not gonna have friends.
Yeah.
Like,
I felt very welcomed, right? So I was kind of like, I don't want to say I was like put off, but I was like kind of like, what's going to happen, right? Am I going to, are all eyes going to be on me being like normal? Like, because I wore a black hoodie and a black hat, right? I didn't wear anything like super, kind of.
Still picking. She is.
But it was.
So my
was
friend
awesome.
said, My friend said that's who I was thinking about. Michelle Lemmy. She's still alive. I swear, I thought she died. It must have been one of those tabloid rumor things that I fell for.
Yeah.
But,
So, anyways, that was kind of like my first like introduction to like that
really?
kind of stuff. Yeah, it was weird. And this was probably 2018 when they did that documentary. So, but yeah, it was totally awesome. I was like, this is fantastic.
Yeah, it was really cool. I haven't been around that many people that I felt like totally comfortable with in a long time too. So that was cool.
Okay, so we talked about two of the bigger aspects of your life. I'm going to touch on the third one, right? Which you post a lot about, and I think you're pretty open to talk about it, but the autism.
Yep.
So can you kind of walk us through the journey? Like, how were you diagnosed? Like, where you're at now, where you were versus living with it and accepting it and now normalizing it almost, right? Saying it's a part of my life and I'm going to deal with it. Like, walk us through that journey, because that's really kind of cool. It really meant something to me when I was going through your stuff. So,
well, thank you. So my brother is 8 years younger than me. He was diagnosed when he was like 3, because boys usually are diagnosed a lot sooner. So I did not know that I was autistic until I was in my 30s, but I had always kind of been interested in psychology, and I always sort of studied people to try to figure out how to have relationships, because I didn't seem to be good at it. And around 2016 or 2017, there started to be this uptick of adult women being diagnosed because their children had been diagnosed. And as they were going through the process, they were like, holy fuck, I see all this stuff in myself too. And so these women, started writing articles about their experience. And I remember reading one of the first ones I read, this lady said, finding out that I was autistic was like thinking that your whole life you were a defective horse when you were actually a zebra. And I just kept reading these accounts of these women who had similar experiences to mine, and like the relationship issues that they had. And I didn't really accept it for myself until maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And that was after just talking to hundreds of other autistic people online. So my like discovery happened through socialization, really, meeting other people. And
so you didn't go to the doctor's office and say, I don't feel right, and they said, you're autistic. Like, so this was more of like, something's not right, and I'm kind of figuring out what it is, and then it just kind of okay.
Well, and also I ended up having a couple of really big burnouts that I didn't know were burnout at the time. And I had some skill regression because of them. And so I was really struggling. And then I was looking, I'm like Googling all this stuff. Like, why is this happening to me? And I started getting results that were, some of them were like these articles that other women had written, and their lives, like their stories were just so similar to mine.
Okay.
And then, there are evaluations that you can do, and there are tests that you can take. And there is, like, some people value the stamp of seal of approval from a medical professional. I kind of don't care.
Right.
Because I know enough about it now to know that I am.
Okay.
And there, like, the likelihood of also having a sibling who's diagnosed, is really high. It's extremely genetic also.
Okay.
So yeah, I was sort of I was peer diagnosed is what some people like to call it.
Okay.
So basically other autistic people, many of whom were professionally diagnosed, told me, hey, you're autistic.
Right. So when you started like reading into it and you're like, okay, these similarities I have, these are traits that I like, I know I have. Was there something that you did about it, or did you just more accept it, or did you kind of like focus in on it, or did you like, are there things you could change like in your daily life to maneuver it around with? Obviously, everyone's first go-to is see a doctor, take medicine, right? But there's other ways to cope and deal with things, right? You've obviously done those. Can you walk us through some of them, or?
Yeah, so there aren't really any standard medications for autism. there are things like beta blockers that are kind of experimental. There are medications for things that are like a side effect of autism. Like a lot of people who are autistic also have PTSD because we don't know how to read people, so we end up getting abused a lot. ADHD and autism also co-occur very, very frequently. So you can get medicated for ADHD, and that may help with some of your autistic symptoms, but there isn't really medication for autism. So for me, it was a lot of like figuring out what my sensitivities were. Like I have a lot of sensory sensitivities that I wasn't aware of before. So I actually got rid of all of my clothes. And I pretty much only wear black now and I only wear things that are comfortable because otherwise I will be angry by 10 a.m.
Okay.
Like if I'm not physically comfortable, sure. I can't focus, I can't function. And the funny thing is, especially once you start learning about these things, then you start noticing it more. And then you start noticing how it's really affecting you. And you're like, how did I get through all this before? Like I commuted on a train downtown Chicago for 15 years or 12, I guess, actually. And I never realized how much it was affecting me. The smell, the crowded, the people, the noise. Like I would be so overstimulated that I would get to work and have to like go sit in a dark room for 15 minutes before I could start working. And then I started taking naps, or not naps, but I would just go in the middle of, in a dark room for my lunch because I was like, I didn't know why. I just knew that was what helped me for whatever reason. And now I know why.
Right.
Because I need a sensory break. Oh, there goes my light.
Oh, you're fine. Don't worry about it. You're good. It didn't affect it that much.
Honestly, like the sensory issues are not as difficult to deal with as the social aspects are really difficult. So it probably doesn't look like I would struggle socially because I am pretty good at making conversation and having conversation, but that's because I've literally practiced and rehearsed conversations my whole life. So I have like these scripts that I can fall back on that they're not even memorized anymore. They're just like autopilot. When I first meet someone, I know I'll say these things. The next time I meet them, I might say this thing. And so learning how to like interact with people authentically as myself is something I'm still learning. Because I still fall back on the scripts all the time.
That's so bizarre because I am the anti of that, right? Like I don't script anything. I'll make a note here and there, but like I wing pretty much everything. Like there's not much that I like, other than like obviously if I'm gonna, do a podcast with somebody, I'll write down things about them and like stuff I want to touch on. But I don't write down like my questions and like what I'm gonna ask, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've never done that ever. Even when I first started doing podcasting, I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit there and read off of a script and say, oh, well, tell us this and tell us this and like, I want the conversation to flow and go wherever it takes us. And that's kind of and I live my life like that. Right. So like I'll walk into a room and I won't know anybody and I'll walk up to somebody and just start talking to them. So like, I'm like the anti, like if I had a script, I'd freak out.
I can do that, but that's because I have scripted questions
that
I ask them to get them to talk about themselves because then I don't have to talk as much. And that's something I learned too.
What's an icebreaker question you would ask somebody? What's a scripted question?
I mean, I would probably try to guess a little bit about them by, maybe their clothes or their accent or something. And I might ask them where they're from, what kind of music, what kind of movies they like. I mean, it really depends on the situation too. Like if it's a work function, there's so many easy scripts that you can use in a work
that's easy, right?
environment. If it's a social environment, you're either doing something together as a group so you can talk about the thing you're doing, or it's people you kind of already know. Like I wouldn't have strangers over to my house, so I wouldn't have to script that as much.
Right. Sure. I don't know, but I always try to avoid the question, when you first start talking to somebody, I don't know why, but the go-to question is, what do you do for work? Right? I hate asking somebody that, right? It's like, I don't care what you do for work, right? Like,
Yeah, I don't.
tell me about you, right? Like, but it's always the go-to question, right? When you meet somebody, oh, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I know so-and-so. Oh, how's it going? Good. Well, what do you do for work, right? And it's like, who cares, right? Does it really matter what somebody does for work? But it's always the one that irks me because it's like everybody's go-to, right? They hone in on that, right? And it's like, what? Ask me something else, right? Like, why do you want to know what I do for work? Like, but that seems to be the appeal go-to question that everybody asks, right? So it's.
I think I avoid that one because it's not interesting to me. Like I want to hear, and usually people will talk. You know, they'll be more excited to talk about something they're excited about, and I want to see and hear what they're excited about. And most people aren't excited about work, so I'm not going to ask about that. Because and also, if they're not excited, they're going to stop talking sooner, and then I have to fill in the silence.
Right.
So I want them to be excited and keep talking.
Yeah, I'll give you my industry secret that I usually go to, right? So when I first meet somebody and I start talking with them, right, and you get a few sentences in, and you kind of the ideal thing, right? What I normally do is I try to pick out like an article of clothing, whether it's a shirt, their shoes, or something. I'll be like, hey, that's a cool shirt, or that's a cool, those are cool shoes. Where you get like, I'll do something like that, like physical, just to see what their reaction is about it. And that's kind of my go-to, right? So if somebody, if we're like in a social setting, obviously somebody's wearing like a rock t-shirt, that's super easy, right? But if you're in a formal setting, right, and somebody's wearing something, my usually number one go-to, if they're wearing a watch, I'll say, hey, where'd you get that watch, right? What watch you got on? And that's kind of my go-to, right? And that's I've always kind of been that way. So the conversation, work is the last thing I care about, right? I don't care what you do for work, right? So
yeah, and they don't either. Most people don't care about their work,
right?
So why would they want to talk about it? Why do you want to?
It just sucks because, like, I think at least in the United States, like, for whatever reason, it kind of defines you, right? Like, it's what you do, and it's what you put the most effort into doing, right? So you could talk about your kids, you could talk about your family, but you're at work more than you are anywhere else. So it's just kind of, I think it's the go-to because it's like you would know more about your work subject than you would anything else. So if somebody says, hey, what do you do for work? Oh, I'm a tax accountant, or I'm an attorney, right? Well, now you can start talking about that. Oh, tell me like, what was your coolest case, or like, tell me about your lab. And it's like, but they're so like, it's just a go-to because we spend so much time doing that, right? But it's like, no one will ask what your hobby is, right? Like,
it's a go-to because capitalism.
Right. Which is, I mean, it's where we're at, right? So it's, defined of that ideology, right? It's kind of what, the fortitude is, right? You have to make money, so it's.
If only we could live in the future in Gene Roddenberry's universe, and people can do whatever they like and whatever they want, and not actually worry about money, because everybody has enough to eat and there's no disease. And if you want to be a scientist, you can be a scientist. If you want to be an artist, you can artist. I wish. Sorry,
I don't think inherently that would ever work.
Eventually,
I don't know.
In a few thousand years,
I wrote an article about space, and that was the question: if you were going to colonize a different planet, what would you do? How would you start it, right? And you had all the geopolitical people talking about, how they would harvest, how they would feed people, right? Are they going to grain? Are they going to grow? You had basically all the economists saying, like, what are we going to do for structure? What are we going to do for, in terms of, and so I asked the more obscure questions. I was like, who would you send? Who would be the first delegates on our planet? If you had to pick 10 people in this world, who would you send? Who are the 10 people that you would put in whatever vessel you're going to get there, right? What would you do? Who would you pick? Because you have to start somewhere, right? You can't just, it's got to be, a group, right, of people. So it was very interesting because it was, the answers were very obscure, right? About who would you send? And then the other thing was what government would you establish, right? Would you establish a democracy? Would you establish a union? Would you establish communism? Would you establish like? And so it was just kind of like one of those type of things where it was like, all the people were talking about like that kind of stuff, and I raised the question of like, what would you pick, right? You can't just say the United States, right? You'd have to look at Russia, China, the Middle East. Who would you pick? What delegates would you send?
There's a book called The Case for Mars, and it's written by Dr. Robert Zubrin. I met him at the Star Trek convention last year or this year. Last year. Was it last year? I think it was last year. But this book is basically last year. Okay. This book is basically what inspired Elon Musk to make his reusable rockets. That was entirely based on Zubrin's ideas. And the book is real interesting. It's a little dense because he does go into a lot of science stuff, but he also has some really interesting ideas about exactly that. Who would you send?
Yeah.
What kind of government would you have?
Who do you represent?
Yeah. It's called The Case for Mars. Right? It's really good.
And that's the thing, right? Are you familiar with Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer? He worked for NASA for like 30 years, and he worked for the CIA. And he talks all about space exploration and what we do and why we're there and what we're doing. It's a very cool, unique perspective of things because, everybody said the space race in the 80s, right, to get to the moon. People say we faked the moon landing to basically psych out China and Russia, but they were arguing, they were finding who was on the moon before us, right? There were weapons up there. There was buildings up there, there was structure, and we wanted to get it, bring it back down to the U.S. and rebuild it, right? They wanted to start from scratch. How can we recreate what was found up there?
Wait, they found what?
Yeah, Stephen Greer is
Interesting.
Awesome. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, he said it was a race to find what was on the moon, and that there was a bunch of stuff that was left over and they wanted to recreate it.
Interesting. Okay, is it from the Anunnaki then?
No, this is much into this basically 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and what we knew about what was going on up there.
Okay.
What was actually there. He said that, when people in the earth see a UFO in the sky, he says they're not UFOs, extraterrestrial as we know. He goes, they are rebuilt, like we reverse engineered craft that we found to get it to fly, and it's us testing to see if it works.
Oh, okay.
And he said that's
cool.
what Northrop Grumman's main thing is in the world, is that they recreate and reverse engineer craft to see if it'll work. We basically take their technology and rebuild it.
Interesting. That's like almost the entire plot of X-Files, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, Stephen Greer's really like kind of in on that, and he kind of lets the cat out of the bag about like what's going on and like why we're so. The other big one is I don't know if you're familiar with the Arctic Circle, Antarctica. Mm-hmm. So like what's under there? They say it's a Stargate. That's why. That's why Hitler was so involved to get there. That's why he took all the German troops over there to see what was down in Antarctica. They said it goes down at least 150 miles beneath the Earth's surface. And they're like, they think Atlantis might be down there. That's why no one can go there and explore, because nobody knows what it is.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fun stuff.
Yeah, I love it. I go down those rabbit holes a lot.
They're fun.
Yeah. So getting back on track now. So we touched on all that kind of stuff. In the future, where do you see, like, do you want music to be your more focal thing? Would you love to do that full time? Is that just something you enjoy? The goal is to be a self-sufficient musician. Is that the end game? That's kind of where I'm going with. Well,
I'm kind of building my own cult.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
No, that's that.
No, but the concept of Häxa being from the future is that, she's come back from the future to give humanity something, and the music is part of it. But there's also a lot of like philosophy and just emotional skills and witchcraft and
okay.
I guess for whatever reason, maybe because I let people talk and I like to listen, people have often come to me just with their thoughts or their troubles, or not even to ask for advice, but
Right.
sometimes just to talk. And I've always really appreciated that, and so now I'm kind of trying to expand that into, to merge it with music in a way.
Okay.
But I also, I really love the idea of Häxa, with the antlers and everything. And I just, I want to create a world that people can come into and feel like they're suddenly surrounded by magic.
Okay.
And anything is possible, and that, you can be powerful, in this space.
So how did you pick that, like, outfit and the accessories, and like walk us through that process? Like, what made the antlers? What made the gowns? What made, like, how do you pick that? Like, is there something there's obviously a deeper meaning behind it? I
don't remember. I know I've always liked deer.
Okay.
I don't remember why I decided to do antlers. I wonder if I wrote it down anywhere. I genuinely don't remember why I decided to do antlers, other than I just. Oh, hang on. I have to do the puzzle piece.
Okay, I gotcha.
Unable to verify. Fuck you, motherfucker. I did it. Okay, there we go. Maybe it was because there was something about in the fictional future world, you could have like animal body parts attached to you, or you could take animal DNA if you wanted to. I don't remember why I chose antlers. Maybe I just thought it would look cool. But the dress that I normally wear is from a thrift store. Thank you. I found that dress at a thrift store, and it's obviously handmade. Like, someone made it from scratch. There's no tags. Some of the seams are uneven, but it just turned out great. The way it kind of works with everything together. So I've tried out a couple other outfits, but that one's my favorite. And I think until I find something I really like, I'm probably just going to stick with that one for a while.
That's
and then
awesome.
I just, the big jewelry, I just like jewelry. So I just wanted to have a lot of jewelry.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's do this. Where could people find you? Do you have a website, social media platform? Yeah. They're hard to list here because normally I plug them in when I do, my, when I use StreamYard, I can kind of put them in via Facebook and then post them. Obviously, I'll link them all to YouTube. But if anybody's watching right now or is going to catch us on the replay, where could they find you and your music at?
I have a website. It's heatherhexa.com. Häxa is H-A-X-A. That's the Swedish spelling of the word for witch. And if you went it to like Spotify, you could just type in Häxa Priestess, because that's the EP that I have out. Or if you wanted to see other Witch House artists, you could go to Blasphemy Records. Blasphemy is spelled with a V where the A should be, so it's BLV. And my EP is there, and there's a bunch of other Witch House artists too. And then I always have links in my profile. So
awesome. So now you have some shows coming up, right? I heard through the.
I forgot. Shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, we have a show this Sunday. It's at a record store, Miyagi Records, with Morbid Circle, who was the person, Jacob, who is Morbid Circle, was one of the first people he was one of my first fans, honestly. Okay. And I think we met in like the DIY Chicago Facebook group, but he, however it happened, we were talking about music, and he heard the first song that I put out and just really loved it. And so he helped me get on a couple of my first shows ever. So he's playing at Miyagi Records this Sunday, and then the other artist is Harley Omega, who I haven't actually met yet either. And then I have shows 3 weekends in a row. This will be a test.
Okay.
So next weekend, I'm performing at this event called Ritual Rhythms, and it's a group of dancers. I think they're mostly belly dancers, but some of them, but they do like non-traditional. Like some of them will dance to, you know, heavy metal or
Okay.
just various things, like not your typical
Yeah.
dance type music. So I'm playing there, and then there's one acoustic band that's also playing with us called Secrets of the Beehive. That's on Saturday the 2nd. That's in Chicago. And then on November 9th, we have a show in Indianapolis with Eve Black, who is also from Chicago.
Okay.
So those are the next 3 weekends, and I'm going to be so tired.
You got it. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, luckily I just had the show in Rockford, so I'm probably not going to change my set list much. All you need to do is fiddle a little bit more with the effects pedal that I'm using, because it didn't quite work last time, and I don't know why. I think it was haunted, to be honest.
All right.
Okay, question. You were there.
I was.
Did it sound like my vocals were auto-tuned?
I didn't notice it, no.
Didn't notice it?
I didn't think so.
So this is the weird thing. I didn't hear it during sound check, and I didn't hear it during the show, but 2 people who took recordings on their phones, when I listened to, like, watch the videos on their phone, my voice is heavily auto-tuned. Heavily and badly. And I'm like...
I mean, I took the video from the front row. I mean, I was pretty much front and center. And
have I seen video?
I posted them on Instagram. I posted them on Instagram and TikTok right away, and I tagged you in them. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go look.
I did that the night of the show. I didn't notice it. Didn't sound that way to me. And it might have just been where they were sitting, the echo from, because it was windy. So if you were portraying, like, I was blocked by it, right? Because I had the speaker in front of me. I mean, I was literally like front row, like 4 seats over. So I had pretty much so I didn't notice it. No.
It's but so I mean, weird. I'll have to go look at your videos then, because if it's there or not there, I'm still going to be curious. But the really weird thing is, when I got back home, I thought, well, maybe it got bumped. I don't know how it could get bumped to turn on. Like, you have to go through several things to turn on those settings, but it's like it's not there. So then I was trying to figure out, well, maybe did this, like, the sound person have some effect on my vocals? But I was running everything through my sub mixer, so there's no way he could have manipulated only my vocals. So
I didn't notice it. No. Personally.
Okay. Well, people that were there in person also said they didn't notice it. It's only been in the videos that I've seen that were taken on cell phones. So I don't know. I'll have to go.
I don't know. It could, like I said, it could have been the reverb. It could have been the weather, right? I was sitting where the wind was being blocked by the speaker. But if you were in the back or the middle, the wind was coming right through.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. All right, I'll have to go check out your videos. I didn't realize you posted them. Or maybe I did and I just forgot. I forget things a lot.
Okay. So here's what we'll do, right? So after you do these shows, right? In a couple weeks, I'll have you back on, and we'll focus more, because obviously we've gone past the hour, which I'm totally cool with, right?
Oh, we have.
I think.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But I think next time what we'll do is, can we focus more on, like, what you do for your voice, like lessons, how like what you do to, like, maintain it, because it's an instrument, right? And, like, a lot of people don't, when you're not talking to, like, somebody who's a professional singer like you are. You just think that you get up in the morning and you stand in front of a microphone, you sing for 2 hours, and then you go to bed, right? But there's, like, prep, there's post, right, of things you drink, soothing your throat, keeping it, like, in tune. Like, I'd like to hear more of that process, right, from a professional, right? So, because you could ask anybody who sings on a semi-regular basis, and they'll tell you but, like, for somebody who does it the way you do it, like, it's a much probably more detailed process of how you prepare, how you prep, and how you maintain it. And I'd love to hear more about that. We just don't have time to, unless you want to talk for another hour.
No, I need to go. I need to
Right,
smoke
so-
some more weed. But I do want to say really quickly that I now have t-shirts.
Awesome.
Finally. So you can order these on my website, or if you're coming to one of my shows, then you don't have to pay shipping. So the next
Perfect.
3 weekends, I will have these at shows with me. And I'm really, really happy with how it turned out.
It did. I have your sticker on my truck, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yay.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
So yeah, so definitely we'll support the local scene, right? You know, Chicagoland area artists making it big. We love that, right? To show all the love and support.
Yeah.
So basically, guys, when this show is over, I'll download it and I'll upload it. I'll try to edit it, but I think what we see is what we get. I don't know if I can do this via TikTok. I'll try, but I can't guarantee anything. But it sounded pretty good.
You won't be able to edit the live in TikTok unless you download it and re-upload it, and then it might even be too long. So
Right, that's what I'm thinking, that it's going to be too long. But I mean, thank you for being an awesome guest. I will just do me a favor and send me those links, and then I'll put them on the YouTube page where people could find you, and then we'll kind of just go from there. And then you know,
so it'll
we'll wish
be
you all
on
the best.
YouTube whenever it goes up. Is that where it'll go? Right.
Yeah. So whenever it downloads, I've noticed on my phone it goes quicker than it does on the iPad, but it takes about 2 hours for it to download. So the video should be up on YouTube tonight, probably by like 11:30. I'll post it before I go to bed.
Oh, awesome.
And then in the morning, if it's not too late, I'll just send you the link, and then you'll have it, and then you can share it wherever you want.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So, all right, Heather. Well, thank you for being an awesome guest. This was fantastic, and good luck in your shows coming up. I know you're going to rock it. You'll do great, and then I'll have you back on in a few weeks, and we'll talk more about the musical aspect of things and vocals.
Could you message me the 2 names of the people that you mentioned? Because I've already forgotten them. Because I really want to look that shit up. That's interesting.
For sure.
All right, cool. All right.
All right.
Have a good night.
Later, Heather. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yep. All right.